Kia ora, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Alicia Mackay Show on today, Friday, the 27th of May. Look, guys, I'm dying. Like, things aren't good over here. I need to know almost immediately as possible who else has this flu situation. Not the COVID. We know about the COVID. That's old news. I don't want to hear about your COVID. I want to hear about your super flu. I want to hear about your flu Rona. I want to hear about your monkeypox. I don't want to hear about your monkeypox. So we've basically got this musical chairs of absence from school and work happening in my house this week. We're all sick, and I don't know, like we've had COVID, so I feel a bit cheated. I feel like we've had the COVID, we've done the flu thing, we've tithed, we've tithed our health, but yet here we are sick again. And so Friday I catch a cold, right? Friday I catch a cold, and look, I'm not blaming you, Digby Scott. But if I was blaming someone, it would be Digby Scott. Just to be clear, if I was blaming someone for my cold, it would be Digby Scott for giving me a cold, which is fine. Like, people get colds, and apparently we've learnt nothing from COVID, and we just go out with our colds, which is fine. We can talk about that another day. And then I fly home from the South Island on Saturday, and I'm going to need you straight in the comments if you've ever had a blocked ear for flying when sick, because if you have, you'll know that it's up there with, like childbirth and tooth pain for discomfort. It's not flash. And I'm like, okay, that's a thing. I've had a cold. I've had a blocked ear. By Monday, I'm in the frickin' hospital with an ear infection and bronchitis. Apparently, I've got inferior tubes. They're all clogged full of stuff. I'm packed full of steroids and antibiotics. Everything's turned to shit. And is this just a rant about me being sick, Cam?
I just want to know if that's a medicinal term. You have inferior tubes. Is that what the doctor said?
He didn't use the word inferior.
Did he use the word tubes?
Yeah. So there's a lot of tubes involved. I don't know if you're across this, Cam. A lot of tubes involved. So I had Bailey had glue ear. She had like she had grommets where they poke a hole in your ear and stick a thing in it. And they're like, oh, tiny tubes, because there's a tube between your nose and your ear and your mouth. There's all tubes going on. And hers are really skinny. And so every time she gets a cold, they clog up and get infected, which is, yeah. And there's the other ones a lot of tubes.
It's never come up. I don't think I've ever had my tubes diagnosed. Maybe I have adequate tubes.
At least you're all blessed with these petite tubes. That's a nature's lottery.
Oh, no. See, there's a fancy word that Helene's used. Eustachian tubes. Yeah, look, there's tubes in your ear, nose, and throat, and then there's a whole set of bronchial things coming in from your lungs, and mine all got clogged up, and the whole thing fell apart, and that's my diagnosis. Anyway, it's not good.
Well, we sympathise with Helen because it's painful. It is painful. So, Alicia, tell us, what is the status now?
Well, we've had this musical chairs, so I've been off since Monday. I'm really sorry to Greater Wellington Regional Council, Haynes Recruitment, and all other clients that I have been useless for this week. I've been off since Monday. I had my middle child, Charlie, home Tuesday. I had my youngest child, Harriet, home yesterday, and I've got my eldest child, Bailey, home today. Current status is we got cross-country today, so it's all going to be good.
Well, I'm coming to you from Brisbane. I'm in Brisbane, Australia, where I have been for the last few days doing some wonderful work with some interesting people and freaking out over how much they do not care about social distancing, COVID, or even any other flus. It is life back to let's pack into convention centres as normal. I have been getting around with a mask quite a bit. I've been doing some camera operating work here. And let me tell you, it is a different mood. So last week I was in Melbourne and didn't get to see one of my brothers at all because that house had COVID and we were still isolating and being pretty careful with that sort of stuff. I flew to Brisbane where they are not doing any of those things. It is a very, hey, let's just get together, have fun and sardine ourselves. 2 people per lift. No, cram them in.
Interesting. So if you get COVID in Queensland, do you still have to isolate?
I have no idea because people don't really talk about it or mention it or anything. But I've been at conventions where there've been literally hundreds and hundreds of people getting about and doing their thing. So I think they're kind of not doing that.
What the hell? Okay, so Stevie, you and I have talked about this situation before where it's like, okay, we spent 2 years in a global pandemic and then you're like, oh, I've got a bit of a runny nose, but I've got a big meeting on, so I'm going to go to work and spread it anyway. Like, why can't we learn?
Well, we couldn't even like successfully keep washing our hands. I feel like we had one job in the early pandemic, and it was like wash, sing yourself a little song. Occasionally, you come across the like lyrics to Mamma Mia that are still up on a bathroom wall, telling you how long to wash your hands. And I think, like, just from casual, no naming names observation, most of us have dropped that.
What do you mean no naming names? That felt like a dig. Are you looking at me? I wash my hands, Callum Valentine.
I'm not generally in a public situation where I'm seeing you wash your hands.
Which is why Jacinda made such a show of it every time she came out. Like,
count to 12,
I just say,
flick your hands, do the thing, scrub, finger. I think a lot of doctors and nurses were like, yeah, that's right, you do it. We do that every single day.
Look, in case Digby Scott needs a little pick-me-up or a testimonial, I'll just say that he's never given me any colds or flu or any diseases of any kind, and he can use that in his testimonial video if he likes.
Look, I'm in a hotel in Brisbane where there's the emergency exit plan on the door, and as well as the normal fire alarm, it says, if you hear the evacuation sound, and it's got written, whoop, whoop. And I'm like, this is obviously just a place where they take their medical or their safety drills pretty lightly. I'm like, sounds like you've got evacuation to be involved in. Like, whoop, whoop, buildings on fire, whoop, whoop. Yeah, WOOP, WOOP written on the door. Brilliant.
Now, here's why this works, because in Queensland, the sun comes up really early and people get up really early. So my last memory of being in Queensland is going out for a morning run. Oh, that was a different time, wasn't it? Running in the morning. Anyway, going out for a morning run and expecting there to be no one there, because in New Zealand, if you run before 6 a.m, mate, everybody is fast asleep. Going down to the beach at like 5:45, and it's pumping. People are serving coffees, and in my mind, they're roller skating, but I don't think that's what they're doing. Very attractive people and matching active wear. There was like boot camps on the grass, and it was like not even 6 a.m. So the thing about
there's a bunch of that going on. Go on.
Well, I was just going to tie this into a very poorly evidenced theory based on one run I had on the beach once, that the reason Brisbane can play so lightly with like heavy topics is just because they feel good because they got up early.
Because they've got superior tubes. I reckon there's great tubes going on here. They're having a good time. I caught up with someone who I hadn't met before, but I've had an online relationship yesterday. I'm part of a social...
Do tell us, Cam. Do tell us about the online relationship you've been conducting.
Yeah, look, I realise as an intro to that relationship, that's a weird way to describe it. I'm part of a men's group that gets together and chats about various issues and things that are specifically to do with men, and I find it really useful. Actually, it's run by Dom Cortuccio, and it's just a helpful way to stay on top of a few things. Anyway, there's someone who lives in Brisbane in the group who I've got a good relationship with, who I speak to sort of every second week at least, and we'd never met. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, I'm in Brisbane. Do you want to hang out? And he said, yeah, sure. Do you want to meet for breakfast? How's 7 a.m? And that's the normal time you meet for breakfast here. If I was suggesting to meet for a morning pre-work connection with someone in Melbourne or Wellington at 7 a.m, I'd be like, okay, that's pretty weird. Sure. No.
Nah.
And as you say, the boardwalks are full.
It's a thing. When I was a schmoozy person that gave a shit about networking, and I was all, we could catch you for a breakfast in the hotel lobby. Should we have a drink after? I don't do that anymore. I don't want to do that. But no, that's a whole thing in general. But the great thing about Wellington is that it's like, oh, we're going to do a breakfast meeting. Shall we make it 9:30 so that we don't get stuck in traffic?
Breakfast starts at 10 a.m. I like it.
Okay, so things that I'm thinking about, one of them is like health in general and health behaviors. And clearly we just suck at them because here we are, all sick. Another thing I'm thinking about is books I've been reading, shockingly. Oh, do you want to give me a doofer? Because I'm gonna tell you about a couple books.
Oh, absolutely. Let's get the Alicia Reed's intro music coming on.
Yeah, so obviously I've been reading some more books. What are you laughing at? Why are you laughing at me, Cameron Fink?
I'm not at all. So the books you're reading, go on.
Okay, this one This book, so first of all, author spotlight, Ruth Ozaki. If you have not read Ruth Ozaki, you need to. She is magnificent. She is a former nun. She's a Japanese American, maybe Japanese Canadian. Oh, you don't want to mix those up, do you? And everything she's ever written gives me warm tingles right through my body. She is such a magnificent writer. It's one of those reading experiences where when you read a Ruth Ozaki novel, you're like, I'm learning a lot. Like, you remember when I read A Tale of the Time Being Cam and I knew a lot about tides? And I was talking about tides a lot.
Previously, the way tides worked hadn't been interesting to you. So it's brilliant when you can read a novel that brings something to your attention and makes you want to learn about it. What was the context that made you want to know about tides in that book?
Well, message in a bottle, classic stuff. So I was learning about tides because that's what Ruth Ozaki was teaching me. And this novel, My Year of Meat, which is so good. It was written in 1998. Now, what I need you to know about this book is not only are they faxing, they're faxing enthusiastically, and they actually include in the novel excerpts of fax that they've sent and received. So you can imagine how delighted I was to be reading a novel full of faxing.
So are these printed out, or are they handwritten faxes? Are there drawings? Show us some. And obviously we'll have to describe them for the audio listeners.
They're just in the book. Like, oh, this is the fax I got from Japan. Anyway, this is a magnificent book. You will learn a lot about meat and antibiotic treatment and culture and Americans because they travel through like backwater America and explore the relationship people have with food and farming and hormones and antibiotics. And it's just so good. And everything she writes is so good. So if you're looking for a good read and you are sick, this is a good one. And the second one that I wanted to mention while I was on a book run is Jane McGonigal, Imaginable. So I recommended Jane McGonigal to CV a few months ago because her first book, that I can't remember the name of, is about the power of video games for learning and teaching and experiencing new realities. And CV is a gamer, and I am derisive, but did play Fortnite once. And so that was a useful conversation starter. But this book is about how to imagine the future. And basically she predicted COVID, but like so did everyone. And now this is how they link together. Now she's talking about this like meat-borne pathogen that's going to take us all down. And she's like, we're all going to be vegetarians, not for ethics, because we get sick. And I'm like, oh, that reminds me of a book I read with a lot of faxes from 1988. And so anyway, this book, if you want to think differently about the future, good one. It's full of lots of useful exercises. So facilitators will also enjoy it. CV, gaming.
Gaming. It's great. You should do more of it. It's the art form that we've invented. Like we invented movies, that was ages ago. Now we've got gaming, and it's incredible. And gaming has gone through this punk rock movement where it's possible.
Punk rock gaming.
It's possible to pick up, like, in the essence of the punk rock movement, right, was that you could pick up a guitar, get like 3 mates, and you had a band because the songs only had to be 30 seconds long. It was mostly shouting, and gaming is the same thing now, where you can pick up these incredible tools, get a bit of art together, do some 8-bit pixel drawings, and you've got a game. And it's of course so much more complicated than that, but the minimum barrier to entry is really low, and so there's this incredible possibility to throw in just incredible ideas.
So hold on.
I was at a conference on the topic. So the conference I was at yesterday, there was a man called Dr. Jordan Nguyen, who's a pioneer in robotics and disability assistance robotics. And he was showing live on stage a game that you played by moving your eyes where you wanted your character or your plane to go. So for people who are in wheelchairs, cerebral palsy, he's been developing these platforms that use the incredible software like Unreal Engine, which creates real-time 3D astonishing graphics, and brought someone up on stage who'd never seen it before. And they were able to control the character just by looking in the direction they wanted the avatar to go. It was astonishing.
This is actually the perfect example of this. So I haven't played it yet. It's top on my list of things to play. It's a game called Before Your Eyes, and it's entirely controlled through your webcam and you blinking. And so you experience the life of this character, and every time that you blink, the life advances forward. So you're living the life of this character. If you blink, the scene skips and you change to a different moment in this person's life. And it is apparently, I can't wait to play this. You have this incredibly emotional experience because you are doing everything to try not to blink because you're experiencing this like quite powerful emotional scene in front of you, and then you end up blinking anyway. And it's this like physically experiencing the sensation of life slipping away from you. And that's a power of storytelling that you don't
Sounds
get
like a
anywhere
great
else.
game. Here, play
I'm
this game
terrified
to
by
experience the sensation of life slipping away from you.
I don't
Well,
need a
this is
webcam to do that.
This is what I mean, that the kind of the Alicia Rent reduction of what gaming is like, oh yeah, bricks and that, like like Pong, you've got your little ball, and this whole it's a whole movement about experiencing really complex emotion and storytelling in that.
I
and
do that at home.
love it.
First of all, I don't need a webcam to do that. I do that at home. There's enough complex emotion in the world. If you want to play a game, play some fucking Uno. Like, just do something. Escape. Don't go further into the complexity of what it is to be living. But
Not enough to be enjoying your life as it's currently happening. Play a simulation of your life and watch it slip by even faster. If you felt any
Your
guilt
life.
about playing a game beforehand.
Like, you are getting a lot of support in that comment, Stevie, and I just thought it was useful that you know that, because I am so unsupportive about something you are so passionate about.
I'd like to hear more of CV's reductionist Alicia impersonation views on things. That was great.
We'll get okay, if you do me an animated title, I will give you one every week.
Challenge
I'm
accepted
here for that.
to
I'm
use
here
some
for that.
gaming pilots, I believe.
Winner.
All right. Look, Cam, your country, I'm really excited about your country. I've got this really optimistic, completely idealistic view of where politics are swinging now that I pitched to CV last night. He raised an eyebrow, but he's like that. He's got quite a smug face. Where as previously discussed, CV.
Resting smug face.
Resting smug face. So I'm like, okay, we had, Brexit and that, and Trump and that sleazy French guy, and it was all a bit rough for a bit, and everybody was like, let's do some really populist, xenophobic, misogynistic politics. And that was really trendy for a while, and it's kind of playing out, people are like, we're getting a bit sick of the old misogyny and racism. And so we're like, we might want something slightly different. Now, to be fair to America, they did their best, but they still got a really old white dude. But what are you going to do? But they did their best. They're on a journey. But now, Australia's like, you know what we're not going to have any more of? ScoMo, useless prick. We're going to have someone else. And not only did they get rid of ScoMo, they were like, we're going to have all these independents and all these women and people from different races. Nice work, Australia.
Yeah, Australia absolutely got it done. There was an air of extreme apprehension before the election that it was going to be just more of the same as you described. And then the populace delivered. And we had a record number of independents winning. Haven't gotten that many independents for a long time. Brisbane, where I'm now, there's 2 seats that have voted in a Green House of Representatives. So previously there was only 1 in Melbourne. Now there's 3. And the Labor government, headed by Anthony Albanese, who, it has to be said, isn't a particularly charismatic man. He's not really a statesman. He didn't have heaps of charisma, but absolutely got it done.
No, that's a fact.
But he's got the distinction now of being the only Australian Prime Minister to have programmed Rage, the longest running music program in the world. So he actually has got some decent cred runs on the board in terms of how he spent his youth and how he's connected to the community. And he's a genuinely lovely man. He's a really, really kind, caring man. He came from state housing, and he's constantly...
We had one of them once. And we got tricked.
Well, it remains to be seen if we're going to be tricked by the "I came from state housing, you can too" rhetoric. But at the moment, we are hopeful, and there's been a huge swing right across the country. And the size of the swing has given a few politicians permission to absolutely tee off at the Murdoch media, at the strategies of the Liberal Party in Australia. And from where I sit, which is we've nailed our political colours to the mast on this show pretty comfortably, and it has been a delight to watch.
It's very exciting. So my new theory that this all ties into, except I think New Zealand's actually going to be the exception, but we can talk about that another day, is that we've had a bit of enough and we're going to get a wee wave now. So we had the wave of all the fear and populism and misogyny and racism. And now we're going to have like a new wee wave coming through politically across the world of just like caring about people again and rising up and being like, do you know what? We've had enough of this shit. Like, you didn't treat us very well, which actually might be a good segue, CV, into your segment this week.
But just before we get to CV, the one thing that really stood out was the ineffectiveness of the relentless Murdoch media campaign against the government that just got elected. And so basically the Murdoch press in Australia is basically advertising for the Liberal Party, and it didn't work. So if you'd been just following the mainstream media, you would have thought there was no chance that we would have elected the government we did. And it's been a delight to see how ineffective that strategy has become. And so people are turning away from those mainstream media feeds. They're getting their information from elsewhere, and it's no longer a potent force. And that is definitely something to be happy about.
Yeah, all you need now is genuine objective journalism and you'll be away.
Oh, mate, crowdsource it.
Yeah. Now, CV, speaking of old school arrogant politicians treating people badly but getting reamed for it, what have you got for us?
Let's set the scene. The UK, England, mushy peas, the Queen, some of the punk bands I was talking about before. Okay, let's set the scene. England and the UK generally, as we know, had a similar level of COVID lockdown to New Zealand. Like there were changes, but you could broadly say it's the same. So all the same hardships were experienced. People were unable to visit their dying relatives, and it turns out that on the days shortly after announcing this, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson was involved in quite significant what have been officially and legally designated parties now, and this was discovered.
Hang on, and this is not party as in political party, but party as in my preferred version with like snacks and booze. Is that right?
Yeah, this is your preferred version of a party. And
yeah, we know how much Alicia loves parties. Just sign us up.
all of this has sort of been drip fed out into the media over the last few months in a way that's it says a lot about the speed at which things come out and changing the reaction to them. So this has taken so long to bubble through, and the catalyst event yesterday morning our time was the release finally of something called the Sue Gray report. Sue Gray was a very senior civil servant who was tasked to give an almost hilariously forensic investigation into all of these incidents, and has now published a almost unbelievably detailed 36-page report detailing the 16 different gatherings and giving precise details, listing emails, redacting names but not of senior civil servants that were involved in these events, and sort of placing the Prime Minister in or about several of these events. He seemed to the general attitude was that he was not intensely involved but would come down every so often and kind of cheer people on, is the general vibe.
So cheer people on at the party, what, just walk in and say I approve of this party and carry on, good people?
Yeah, he gave this.
No, it's like the Brisbane sign cam. He would walk past the hallway and like whoop, whoop.
He gave this ludicrously weak apology in the last few days, and I think it's sort of the way he's trying to play this is it's gone on for so long, and we're now out of this mode of thinking where parties are unimaginable, and so it's sort of there isn't nearly enough contrition, and when there is contrition, there is this kind of Etonian contrition where you sort of go out, the headmasters given you a bit of a telling off, you hang your head, say that you're ashamed and you'll never do it again.
Naughty boy. But we've
And
all
points
got
for
to
use
move.
of points for use of Etonian too. What a glorious description to describe an
was good.
apology.
But this is the classic, and it's the old, it's in the past, it's in the past. Yeah, okay, we had some land wars. Yeah, we had some genocide, but we got to move on. We got to look to the future.
I murdered some people. I murdered a few people, but it was weeks and weeks ago.
Yeah, I think like that there's a really important thing to remember, which is everyone else in the country had to switch their codes of behavior, including things that they absolutely socially had to do. Sit with dying relatives, that really somber bit is there. But there's also, I listened to, one of my sources for this is the Guardian podcast, and listening through to that, there's a level of pearl clutching that to me goes a little bit too far. Someone on the Guardian podcast, one of the hosts said, I have never had drinks in my workplace from 4 p.m., which I've certainly done that. I don't know about you guys.
So was it the time?
Yeah, I was about to say that's an oddly specific refusal. I've never had drinks in my workplace from 4 p.m.
It sounds like a game of Cluedo, like drinks in the workplace at 4 p.m. with the muddling stick.
The candlestick. I guess.
I mean, this was so it was called the Wine Club, and they would do this every week at and start at 4 for drinks. And I think, yeah, that it's important not to let the context of this, of everybody else's restriction, of Boris going on TV and announcing these restrictions and giving all the details of the rules that he then claimed he didn't know about. That's pretty hard to overstate. But the consequences of this are really interesting to kind of. So this is one of the emails from the report, which is, it's very British in tone, and full disclosure, I did used to work for the UK Foreign Office, so I have spent some time in the kinds of cultures that we're talking about here. They're incredibly hardworking people, and I will say, like, yeah, having been in the Foreign Office media team, it was a sort of work hard, play hard culture. I would describe it. And
can I just make the point, CV, in this email that there are a lot more exclamation marks than I would have expected in a British environment. It's very bring their own booze. Hopefully there aren't too many people.
Yeah, no, there's nothing about diminishing it or trying to play it down at all. It's like, great. Could you also suggest they bring their own booze? Not sure we will have enough. Now it sounds like they've got heaps.
Yeah, I think they had quite a bit. I mean, the sort of real headline jumping scandal of this was really the sort of, people were throwing up. There was red wine on the walls that the cleaners had to come in, and yeah, as we had a comment before, the just astonishing arrogance of it. And this is, so our pull quote on the screen is Boris Johnson, after his 2-minute contrite apology, immediately launched into his kind of Telegraph headline kind of attack back at Keir Starmer. So Keir Starmer is the leader of the Labour opposition, had his own very minor scandal involving a korma and some delivered beers, but nothing like the kind of
what a great sentence. A minor scandal involving a korma and some delivered beers.
But Boris sort of, quoted him as the great gaseous zeppelin of his pomposity has been permanently punctured by this incident, which I don't think really flies.
Did he come up with that himself, do you think?
Oh, this is the kind of, like, if there is one thing positive about Boris, he's a truly lyrical speaker when he gets going. And when you get through the sort of
gaseous zeppelin,
when you get through the bluster, he can really turn a phrase. So yeah, the whole thing's a bit depressing. It's cast in this strange light now of us being able to live life again. and to look back at this forensic examination of who did what, when, exactly what time was the first can of beer cracked open, and kind of clutch our pearls. But also, this is incredible arrogance at a time when, people were truly suffering.
And honestly, it just goes to show that if you just keep things quiet for long enough, you'll be all right. Because if you'd had that kind of understanding at the time of exactly what was going on, like you remember when old mate down in Dunedin took his kids for a drive to the beach and he basically got fired. Like everyone was like, no,
the bloke who went mountain biking with his face on the side of his van and had the audacity to drive more than 5 kilometers away to not go to the supermarket. That was like... Yeah. The public were out for retribution.
For blood. And so we weren't having that. And so you've got to imagine that if there'd been that level of disclosure about what was actually going on at Downing Street at the time, it would have been political suicide. But because it's been a couple of years now, we're all kind of a bit sick of COVID chats. And as we've mentioned before with our health behaviours, we've got a really short memory for just what you should do. We're like, lockdown, you had to stay home, didn't we? Yeah, it wasn't too good. But we're just kind of moving on. Is he going to get away with it? I mean, you tell me.
Yeah, so as soon as much as Sue Gray has desperately tried to exert every feeling of independence, there is a really telling phase in the report. So there was a party in the actual domestic residence part of number 10. It was excluded from the Sue Gray report because the police got involved as she was investigating. So there's this bizarre bit where she says, the police were investigating, so I had to stop investigating. And then the police stopped investigating, and so I didn't have to investigate anymore. And there's
so
kind
just passing the conch around?
Well, yeah, the Guardian's take was that there was a line in terms of investigating the Prime Minister's personal residence. And that wasn't set out anywhere. We will probably never see that written down, but that was the Guardian's take. And I think it's, I think Boris Johnson will survive this. The general feeling is that he will survive this. There is Parliament's in recess at the moment, so all the MPs are heading home to face their constituents about some of this. So we will have quite a few possibly turn in what's called their letters. So in order to replace the Prime Minister in the Conservative Party, you have to submit your letters to the, I forget, it's named after a year, the 1812 committee.
They just sounds like they fire cannons.
They'll crack a few cans.
It's a very British set of circumstances that has to happen.
A boat race,
he will probably survive this. He will probably survive this mainly because there is no clear successor at the moment. It's
brilliant. So after some great political news in Australia, let's just bring the mood back down again with the idea that someone who flaunted the rules absolutely rode the wave of his own pomposity and won't suffer any consequences. Brilliant. Boot it home, Alicia.
No, I'm just going to tie it all in with a rant about men, because I just think that's a really nice way to wrap it all up today, where it's like, men do this shit and everyone's like, I know he went to Hawaii, or I know he had a party, and I know there was a bit of Brexit, or I know there was a bit of misogyny, but what can you do? And all I can think about is, and you're going to have to remind me the name of the politician, which is a terrible benefit fraud CV, Greens MP.
Matidia Tudor.
Matidia Tudor, who was like, oh, by the way, when I was 19 and doing a law degree with a child on my own, I once didn't claim a flatmate when I was getting the benefit. And we were like, that's it, mate. No way. 20, 30 years of dedicated public service mean nothing in the environment of a choice you made when you were poor, desperate, and trying to better your life. Piss off. Whereas, like, these men were like, oh, boys will be boys, won't they? They're just not very good men. And so it just kind of shits me, because I think if that had been a female prime minister in a similar situation, I think the level of scrutiny and the level of retribution would absolutely have been higher. And so I'm a bit shat by that. But anyway, the good news is that Australia's having a go. And oh, look, I don't have a lot better than that.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. That has been the seamless segue to the closing of this edition of the Alicia Mackay Show. We've had a great time. We hope you've had a great time, and we'll see you back in this space next time.